protection, and provision. If you did not get an opportunity to hear the Hagar lesson, Jamie will have that uploaded this week. Please go back and watch that 30-minute lesson. It's very key in our identity study. Okay, last week we launched our third memory verse, and I know you're all really sad that we're moving on from the Isaiah verse, but I bet you'll get over it. So I know you're just learning the Genesis verse, but let's give it a go. Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. All right, let's say that again. I'm going to challenge all of you to memorize these verses. I promise they'll pay big dividends if you'll bury the Word of God in your mind and in your heart. So let's try it again. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. All right, so work on that this week. Please turn your cell phones off, unless it's your Bible. In that case, just turn it on airplane mode, so that would be super duper. All right, we'll go ahead and jump in here on lesson 15, Victim No More, and this is one of our foundational lessons. So 6 or 7 of these are key to your healing. This is one of them. Hey, Maddie, happy to see you. Come on in. We've got a seat right here by Rachel. She'll pass. Oh, yeah, make room for you there. Happy to see you. So if we see Rachel Martz tonight, we have perfect attendance, and that has not happened yet. We hope Rachel makes it. Okay, jumping in. So I hope God is already meeting you in a significant way in this third unit, my identity. Our first unit was my life, second unit, my mind. We're focusing on key parts of this walk in each unit. This one is my identity. Knowing our value and importance is key to living successfully, because every thought we have, every choice we make hinges on 2 things: how we view God and how we view ourselves. Those are the 2 most important things that we have squared away. Having the truth about who God is and having the truth about who we are. The word victim is confusing to many people. As I said last week, being victimized and living as a victim are 2 different things. It's very important we're clear about that. We are victimized when someone chooses to do something hurtful toward us, when they treat us unfairly, when they take something from us. We are victimized when somebody tells lies about us and shares it with another person. I was victimized by my dad when he walked out on our family, left us to live in poverty. And you've been victimized in many situations by many people. We don't get a choice about being victimized, but I want you to always remember that God will heal any wound any person creates in your heart and in your mind. He'll heal any wound if you will trust Him and apply the tools that He's given us. And we're just now getting to the main tools, and some of the key tools we won't even get to till Unit 4. But we do, however, have a choice about living as a victim. We always have a choice about whether we live as a victim or do not live as a victim. A victim is someone who defines themselves by the bad things that have happened to them. And there's your first blank, the word defines. Victims see themselves as having no choices, as being condemned to be miserable. Victims blame everyone and everything for their misery rather than taking responsibility for changing the things in their life that don't work, changing the things they do have control over, such as their bad behavior. Victims make bad choices that add further pain to their life, but they don't recognize how they're sabotaging themselves. And we're trying to nip that in the bud in this very important unit. Hagar was victimized. She was treated unfairly by Sarah and Abraham, no doubt about that. But instead of going God's way, instead of getting healing, Hagar became a victim. She retaliated, treating Sarah in a mean and disrespectful way, and then she ran away. Hagar's story is the classic victim story. That's why I want you all to hear that, even if you missed it last week. Bad things did happen to Hagar, but then she made a series of poor choices that made her life worse, not better. And that's what victims do. Our goal this week and these coming weeks is to help you recognize when you are behaving as a victim, to help you become aware of your victim patterns and behaviors so you can make better choices. All right, there's your next blank, aware. So here's a key truth that you will be learning throughout this unit. You always have a choice about how you respond. You always have the power to make a godly choice. You may not like any of your choices. I can promise you, you're going to go through things in life when your menu stinks. You got 3 choices and you're not wild about any of them. But that doesn't change the fact that you do have a choice. You always have a choice. When we act like a victim, we are operating out of a lie, probably several lies. We're living in pride. We're believing that if we go the opposite way God tells us to go, that we will be better off. That's what Hagar did. She rejected God's way of forgiving Abraham and Sarah, letting him take that bitterness from her and instead treat them with kindness. Hagar rejected God's way, instead chose pride pathway. She chose to get back at them and then abandon them by running away. When we reject God's way of doing things, we are hurting God's heart. We are offending him because he loves us. He doesn't want us to go down roads that hurt us. And he knows if we take pride pathway, we're going to get hurt. He wants the best for us. He hates it when we reject trust because he knows it means we're going to suffer more. When we are acting like a victim, anytime we make a choice opposite of what God's way is for us, and there's your blank, opposite. So in a sense, much of victim behavior is just sin. And that is why we can say, without doubt, every human being acts like a victim sometimes, because every human being does regretful things and makes bad choices and responds poorly. There are no exceptions to that. Anytime we try to blame someone else for the choices we have made, we are being a victim in some way. This is not an easy concept to grasp. I have adults 2 and 3 times your age struggle with understanding the victim behavior. So we may have to work a little bit to really get a hold of this. The reason it's so hard to grasp this concept is because we are masters at self-deceit, and we justify our poor choices. Every human being does that. It takes honesty and humility to see victim behavior, and we resist honesty, and we resist humility. It takes courage and hard work to change victim behavior. It doesn't happen by itself. But we can't even start to fix the problem if we don't know where it is. If we're not aware of where our victim attitudes and behaviors are showing up, we won't even know where to start and what to change. So that's our work this week and in coming weeks. So here are 2 typical victim perspectives. I cannot do this another way because of my circumstances. And the other flip side, the same coin, I have to do it this way because I don't have a choice. Those are never true. We always have a choice as to how we respond. All right, let's take a look at this card. I'm going to talk about this a little bit tonight. Being a victim is like joining a club. The Victim Club has a lot of members in it. Obviously, I don't want you to be in this club, but we all are in it. So I'm going to teach you the way out of the club, but the first thing we need to do is understand the club. There are rules we follow to stay in the club. When we choose to be in the Victim Club, these are the rules we're following. Before I read them, the first one is our how we view ourselves. Rule 2 and 3 are our relationship rules, and rules 4 and 5 are our life conduct rules. So let's read them. Accept that you are truly of little or no value. That's rule number 1. Fold your card in half if you like. Number 2, do not ask for what you need or want. That's a relationship rule. Number 3, another relationship rule. Treat yourself or others disrespectfully, preferably both. And then our 2 life conduct rules. Do not change dysfunctional areas of your life. Live your life in extremes, avoiding balance. All right, so that's what it means to be in the club. It means you follow those 5 rules. Let's break it down. Let's see, look at some detail on each of those. Rule number 1, accept that you are truly of little or no value. That's a lot. But that's the thing about living as a victim. Our life is built on lies. That's the whole deal. Victims do not believe they are worth loving just for who they are. They believe their value is conditional, and they don't meet the conditions. Victims believe they are somehow defective at the core of their being. That is key in the Victim Club. That is a core false belief that somehow, at my very essence, I'm just a defective person. That's a lie, but that is what victims believe. So let's look at some specifics. This is where I want you to grab your highlighter. I'm going to read these 10 categories of victim behavior. This will help you begin to dial in, understand what victims are, and I want you to use your highlighter, because we're going to just read these all pretty quickly. I want you to highlight everything that you resonate with. Nobody's going to look at this except you. This is only for your eyes, so be bold, be honest, and go for it. Highlight anything you identify with. Number 1, victims approach life with fear. Fear of anger, fear of failure, fear of disapproval, fear of rejection, fear of taking chances, getting too close to people. Number 2, victims have little sense of who they are, comparing self to others, trying to please everyone, being fake with people. Number 3, victims live with uncomfortable feelings, anxiety, loneliness, depression, jealousy, self-pity, anger. Number 4, victims are hard on themselves, perfectionists, noticing only flaws, critical of anything they do, unable to let go of mistakes. Number 5, victims place too much value in the opinions of others, worry about what others think, easily hurt, feeling crushed when criticized, not able to speak their mind or say no. Number 6, victims don't value themselves, feeling stupid, calling themselves names, having poor self-care, not trusting their judgment. Number 7, victims feel inferior to others, shy, rarely sharing thoughts, doubting ability to succeed, thinking they don't measure up to others. Number 8, victims make poor choices, not controlling impulses, overreacting, choosing addictive substances, being self-destructive. Number 9, victims don't treat others respectfully, blaming, judging, trying to control others, exploding at others, resentful, bitter, mean. And finally, number 10, victims place too much value in what they do, being a martyr, performance-driven, overachieving, finding all work joyless. How many of you found yourself in several places on this list? I certainly could find myself still in some of those too. These are common. Everybody has some of this stuff going. Every person on the planet has some of these things going on. You know why? Because it's just part of being a human being. That's just how we are. Why do we do these things? Why do we make these choices? Why do we adopt these painful responses to life? Well, 2 reasons at least. We have false beliefs and we have unhealed wounds. And there are your blanks, false and unhealed. We're going to deal with the wound part of this in Unit 4. Unit 4 is called My Heart. And we're going to get to that in that 4th unit. Today, let's deal with the false beliefs. For each of these 5 rules, I'm going to give you some typical false beliefs. There's more than I'm going to mention, of course, but I want to give you some typical ones to get you thinking that contribute to that victim rule. And then I'm going to give you a rebellion strategy, because I want you to be rebellious against any victim behavior you recognize in your life. I'm going to give you a game plan to get out of the club. For rule number 1, accept that you are truly of little or no value. Hey, we did it. Perfect attendance. We're all here. Good to see you, Rachel. She needs a card. Where's an extra card? Marker. She's got a marker, just not a card. All right. All right, praise the Lord. I prayed for this over and over. I'm so happy. I'm just so happy to see you. Just seeing you guys makes me happy, so I'm glad you're here. All right, so we're talking about the false beliefs that might go along with rule number 1. Accept that you are truly of little or no value. Number 1, God doesn't love me. God doesn't accept me just as I am. God made a mistake in the way He created me. So if you want to live a successful life, then you've got to believe the truth, because those are lies. Here's the truth. God has a deep and complete love for me that does not change no matter what I do. God accepts me exactly as I am. His acceptance never hinges on my choices. And there's your blank. The word accepts. And the 3rd one, I am perfect for the life God created me to live. Nothing about me is a mistake. Guys, these are powerful truths, life-changing truths. I hope you're reviewing your notes and doing your journey steps each week to really work these things in so that you can carry them every day of your life. These are life-changing truths. These lists that I have read here, the true list. So here's your rebellion strategy for rule number 1. Define your identity the way God sees you and reject everything else. You guys have had the lesson on the enemy and Satan's influence. He's the one who speaks those negative, derogatory lies in your mind. Don't listen to it. Listen only to the truth. All right, don't be a victim. Instead, believe the truth, live by the truth. All right, let's move on to rule number 2. Don't ask for what you need or want. Victims are insecure about getting their needs and wants met, so they go about it in unhealthy ways. So I've got some examples to read for you. Here's one. Vivian is a member of the Victim Club. She's been dating her high school boyfriend now for several months, and David is continually pressuring her to have sex, something Vivian does not want to do. She wants to honor God. She wants to wait until she is married. But each time she's alone with David, their embraces get a little more passionate, And David gets a little more persistent. But Vivian is afraid to speak her mind and set a boundary because she's afraid that David's going to reject her, that David will be angry with her and perhaps leave her. So she just goes along with David's advances. Vivian is not responsible for David's actions, pressuring her for sex, but she's absolutely responsible for sharing her voice, for sharing her position about this and making it clear she is not having sex before marriage. She's being a victim by not using her voice. Fear is the driving factor for those who follow rule number 2. Victims are afraid of having their requests denied or afraid they will be rejected. And I'm the first one to admit rejection is a painful wound. I am not minimizing that in the least. But instead of just plainly and respectfully saying what they want, they choose to be a victim. And they end up with painful consequences. There are 2 general types of victims for our 2 relationship rules, rules 2 and 3. There's the passive victim and there is the aggressive victim. And one isn't any better than the other. The passive victim struggles to find their voice and use it. The aggressive victim is like a bully. They use their voice, but they try to force people to do what they want. Both styles are unhealthy. Following Rule 2 plays out in 1,000 ways, but let me share some favorites. Let's start with the passive victim. The passive victim is afraid to ask for help or say they have a problem or an issue with something, like Vivian. They are afraid of rejection or receiving disapproval. They're afraid of someone being angry with them. So they have surrendered their voice. To receive disapproval in any form just reinforces the false beliefs that they have about their identity. They would rather be invisible than risk rejection and anger. These are powerful forces. And that was me many years ago. Being raised by a violent, angry, alcoholic father made me afraid to ever speak my mind. And honestly, guys, that was a good strategy when I was a child, because I didn't get beat as often as my brothers did. But that dynamic followed me into adulthood, and that was not good. And it began to backfire on me. Another trait of the passive victim is to feel sorry for themselves. They see themselves as weak and pitiful, incapable of living a joy-filled and satisfying life. The banner over their life says, miserable, I'm miserable, but they continually create circumstances that prove it true. And they don't see how they're doing that. They see life as a minefield, and to avoid being blown up, they work very hard to please everybody. And if no one's told you yet, let me tell you, that is not possible. You cannot please everybody. They agree to do things they should not do because they're afraid to say no. Their spiritual life is very complicated. It's impossible to obey God when you're trying to obey every person on the planet, because those things come in conflict all the time. Their victim identity prevents them from seeing what they are doing to themselves and what they're doing to everyone around them. What they can't see is their misery is their choice. They're choosing it. At any point, they can stop living their life that way and instead take responsibility. That's what healthy people do. All right, let's talk about the aggressive victim for just a moment. This victim has no trouble speaking their mind. They have a strong need to be in control. Because of this, they are demanding and threatening. While the passive person hurts themselves, the aggressive person hurts everyone else. They don't see that every adult is is responsible to live their life the way they see fit. They can't accept that others will make disappointing and painful choices, so they try to control them. The aggressive victim is just as fearful of being disappointed or rejected as the passive victim, but it plays out differently. It does not look the same. So Vivian chose the aggressive style here. She might say something like this to David: "You touch me like that one more time and I'm going to post it on social media. What a jerk you are." That's using our voice in a way that's threatening, demanding, controlling, unkind, mean. That's a bully voice, rather than just sharing our needs. The aggressive victim also feels sorry for themselves. They carry around their wounds like a badge of honor, and they expect other people excuse me, to cater to them because of it. And again, they can't see that they're doing this to themselves. They don't choose to make godly choices or take responsibility for what they're doing. Both the passive and the aggressive victim often expect others to read their minds. This one makes me crazy. This is such a no-win for everybody involved. The victim has this idea in their head about how things should go, what should happen, and they expect everyone around them to know that without them saying it. This is just disrespectful of everybody, because nobody's a mind reader. And so those who are in relationship with this victim, expecting their minds to be read, you just constantly find yourselves in trouble because you're not reading their mind. And this victim doesn't get their needs met either. In healthy relationships, both parties are free to make whatever decisions they believe are the right choices to make. No one is attempting to manipulate the other person. Victims following Rule 2 are also believing lies. Let's look at 3 typical lies that go with Rule 2. Either I determine my worth, or other people determine my worth. Either other people are more important than I am, or I am more important than other people. Either other people have control over me, or I am in control. Here's the truth. God determines my worth, and He says I am exceedingly valuable. I have equal value to every person on the planet. I am not less than anyone. You have a blank there. It's equal. It's the word equal. And finally, God is the only one who has any real control over my life. Here's your rebellion strategy for rule number 2. Clearly state your needs and wants and be willing to accept the person's response, even if it's disappointing. All right, let's take a mid-lesson break, stop for a moment. I want you to think about these things we've gone over here in the last few minutes. When have you chosen to be a victim? Did something in our lesson brought some thoughts, some past examples to your mind? A time when you did not ask for what you needed or what you wanted. And write down a few things about that. Let's take a short break.